We go way back from my days at Forbes. You have been at Forbes for 16 years.
16 years. Do you know how old that is in like journalism years? Like dead.
Yeah, it's like multiply that by 4 or something. It's not quite dog years, but it's almost getting there.
Yeah, I was a 28-year-old intern on the magazine side, and we printed on dead trees 28 times a year.
I don't think I was there for 28.
And we had a yacht, and we had catered dinners on Fridays, and they brought out like salmon and steak and like a little Pinot Noir. Now I can't even get a cup of coffee.
I totally missed that. Okay, but real question. You were an assistant managing editor at Forbes. At one point in time, 16 years ago or 10 years ago or whatever that might have been, that job would have been, I assume, a lot of wrangling magazine copy, for the 20 or 28 issues that are being distributed every year to loyal Forbes readers. What does that job look like now? I have a sense that that's not what it is.
No, and we're a little loosey-goosey with titles. I don't really, it's not like it's it. So, yeah, I really run our founders division. So my main job is, entrepreneur stories. A lot of it is the Forbes Under 30 franchise. I heard my colleague Alex Conrad got into some spicy dialogue about that, but it's in good hands with Alex. I'm sure he did a wonderful job. So Under 30 franchise, which is everything from events to video to the list. We just closed it last Friday. It comes out December 3rd, so save your hate until that comes out. And then I'm also just launched and running our new top creator franchise, which is very exciting. I know there's a lot of talk about creators here, and this is a hardcore objective list where you're taking the Forbes brand and name, which is a credentializer, which is really good at defining success in authenticity. Not authenticity, but like you've made it kind of stuff with the new media, and it's a really good combination.
How does that list work, if you don't mind just illuminating us?
So we create a special Forbes blend. No, it's an objective list where we have a weighted average where the most important thing is earnings, because we think your earnings really show your influence, power, and respect in the marketplace. We have a Forbes entrepreneur score. We always reward entrepreneurs. So if you make $1 million pitching coffee for someone else, that's a great business. But if you create your own J.J. Colao coffee and it's in every single Walmart in the country, like Emma Chamberlain is, you're running a company, you're creating jobs, that's a 4. And then we look at engagement rate and follower count, put it all together, and snapshot.
That was very illuminating. Thank you. I appreciate that granularity.
It's in the methodology. I'm not really steering any secrets here.
Yeah. So you mentioned it revolves around these franchise lists, and those have always, I think, been a big part of the Forbes brand. The Forbes 400, the billionaires list. I worked on like the next billion-dollar companies list and those sorts of things. But you all are expanding those kinds of franchises, doing wealth advisors and other kinds of professionals. Can you talk a little bit about what kind of the strategy is going forward in terms of Forbes franchises and lists overall?
Well, I can't speak for other lists, but when I build something, I think of it as like a pyramid. And the list is the biggest base of the pyramid because it creates, first of all, it's amazing for building reporting. It's amazing for sourcing because you're out there talking to everyone. You create a list, right? And then from that, that's the base. Then you move up, and then you're going to get great stories and ideas and trends from that reporting. Then that list becomes the base of a community, and you can do an event. We just did a big Forbes top creator upfronts in LA. We got 400 top creators, 400 CMOs, smashed them together and created a marketplace, and they were doing deals. And then from the event, you get a community. That's the key. Also, I think lists are very good in this world where you have to be 8 places at once, whether it's on YouTube, on TikTok, in print, and I think lists do very well for social media, but we've been doing lists of Forbes, as you know, for ever, since the beginning of Forbes.
Yeah. So it's basically kind of creating this orbit, and you call it a pyramid, where you build all of these things on top of the foundation of the list, and all of those things then create or create kind of a critical mass for other lines of business.
Yeah, I mean, the list is it's a great product, but also for a newsroom, it's a great forced exercise on like, what is out there. I'm talking to all my sources. I'm finding people. I'm finding ideas. I'm finding stories. Like that was great with the Forbes 100 where I first started. Like you learn how to report, but you're also finding these great trends, ideas, and stories while you're researching all the people. So it's a great newsroom exercise, a great exercise for your own brain because it forces you to kind of go on this scavenger hunt for what's happening in your beat, in the subject, and the topic.
How do you think about the ideal Forbes story? You mentioned entrepreneurship. I imagine there's kind of some character in there, earnings, kind of unapologetic capitalism, I think is a big part of it. What in your view, is kind of that ideal story?
I think our managing editor, Michael Nor, always says that a Forbes story should make the reader leaving either smarter or richer or both. So there's got to be we always have an angle, or not an angle, we always have a point of view. This is not like a wishy-washy thing. You're going to find great access in stories that you can't get anywhere else. If it's an investigation or a trend, again, that's reporting. That's not, Peter Kafka was talking about commodity news. This is not commodity news. Like you are, on the plane with Elon as he's planning to, put a paywall on Twitter, and you're breaking that, and you're reading that at Forbes, and you're getting some kind of lesson. It might be the right lesson, it might be the wrong lesson, but you're getting that from there. And the money's there because you're not just, it's the why now. It's a news hook. Why is Forbes reporting the story? Why am I reading the story right now? It's not because JJ gave me access. It's because there's some sort of tension. There's some sort of why now about why we're giving you that real estate, whether it's largely digital real estate, but that's how we're always thinking with the magazine. And it's kind of still a magazine mindset. Like, why are we hitting publish on this right now? And there needs to be a scoop or some sort of lesson involved that no one else has.
So it needs to be original reporting. There needs to be, it sounds like, some sort of voice, some sort of opinion, some sort of lesson, not just, here's a thing that happened. It's sort of more of the moment and more actionable than that.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of, it's not an opinion, but it's not, we're either, the old saying was Forbes is like the drama critic of business. We're either like applauding you're like a 5-star review, or we think you're like a criminal or a fraud, or you're defrauding somebody and we're gonna, give it to you. So it's like, they always kind of think in this, they always said kind of like a theater critic, a movie critic of business. And there is definitely part of that still.
Yeah. Let's talk business models. So there was a time.
You've got the wrong guy.
Well, we're going to give it a shot. There was a time where it was pretty simple, right? Like you sold advertising, you sold pages in a magazine, and there were 50 pages or something that you could sell to advertisers.
Yeah, and the margins were like 40%.
Yeah, fat margins. That moved to digital. There's obviously still a magazine business, but it's not nearly as big a part of the pie as it once was. And then there was sort of mass advertising on digital, and that is augmented by the magazine business, and life goes on. Now there's Forbes Premium. There's a very large events business, it sounds like. I would love to hear a little bit about sort of that evolution and anything you might be able to share in terms of that strategy overall.
Sure. Well, first, when I started 16 years ago, these numbers aren't exactly right, but they're close, where I think Forbes, the magazine, brought in 95% of the revenue, and the rest was like events and .com. I mean, now I think it's like the magazine's still profitable, but like it brings in like 1% of the revenue. So we're obviously, and we were in the eyeball business, with that giant growth when you had the BuzzFeeds of the world and those sort of things. It was eyeballs, our contributor network. So we were, we gave it away for free, and we were gonna make money on volume. That doesn't work anymore. So now we're moving more towards premium content with paywall strategies, and it's kind of those things are shifting. But events are huge because, again, I think after COVID, there's been a huge, like we're all here now, like people love to get together. And we make most of our money on big sponsorships. You'll see like we charge very little in tickets. Like the under 30 ticket is like the best value like going. And I'm not saying, like, it's amazing what we get. So we make money from the big advertising. And events are great because, first of all, it's revenue that's not correlated to the ever dying digital media revenue, but also it creates community. It also helps the brand, and we get a ton of content while there. So it's kind of like an event. It makes money, but it also creates content, it creates news, creates community there. So it checks a lot of boxes. We find it very, very helpful across business lines. Not just making money, but just it's good for the company.
So are events the primary contributor to revenue?
No.
Okay, but an increasingly
Still make money in
part.
advertising, but I'm saying it's a nice way to it's like it's not a double-edged sword, but it kills two birds with one stone. Where you make revenue, you create business, you create relationships, and it usually begets more revenue.
I understand. You mentioned the Forbes contributor model, which was a big part of the digital brand when I was there, and it sounds like is no longer really an important piece of that business. Is that correct moving forward?
No. Okay. So I don't really work much with the contributor model, but we still have like more than 1,000 contributors, and they help us scale, and they do a ton of work. So our journalists and reporters really get to kind of drill in and do that really important journalism, so they're not chasing commodity news, because a lot of that's handled by our breaking news team now, or it's handled by our contributor network. So it's still a very, very vital piece.
What is Forbes' view on AI?
We think it's extremely important. We're obviously watching and seeing. We have a big lawsuit against Perplexity right now, which I don't really know much about, but it's been, we're watchful of it. We're being cited a lot for standing up to AI, but at the same time, you can't just close your eyes and hope it doesn't go away. One thing we're interested in is, we've been around for 100 years, so we've been publishing a magazine for 105 years. That's been, it's digitized now. It's been fact-checked. So if you kind of fed 100 years of business journalism into an AI machine, like that's a very interesting way of like resurrecting content that's been long dead. Who knows if that can go in and feed some sort of experience where it's like, oh, a story we wrote and we interviewed Thomas Edison, or we interviewed, Winston Churchill, or we interviewed, J.P. Morgan. Like that's kind of cool to feed into some sort of, chatbot kind of thing. We're not doing that right now. I mean, we're looking at it, but we have this amazing kind of like stale content, but if you can repackage it and power it with an AI brain, very interesting. I mean, how many times have we interviewed Warren Buffett? Like, we could create like a Warren Buffett chatbot based on just Forbes' quotes, stories, and interviews. That's just one example.
Is this something that's being discussed within the newsroom?
Yeah. I mean, we have meetings about like, let's get creative. How do we get in front of this? We also know that it could be an interesting tool. Again, like Peter and said that it hasn't like changed the game yet, but if it's going to make our reporters better, like we're embracing it. Like we have access to whatever that is, like Microsoft. Is it Copilot? What do they call it?
Yes. Behind the scenes in terms of coding, you mean?
Well, not whatever. We have like we have like the corporate version of ChatGPT that we tell our reporters like, it's not writing for us. No, it is not writing for us. But for, just play around with it and what can it do to help and get rid of those menial tasks that you're doing, make it easier.
Forbes gets incredible access to billionaires. You talked about profiling Warren Buffett many times, not you personally, but the brand. Who is on that wish list for you or for the brand in terms of folks that you haven't maybe been able to talk to, but Forbes would really like to speak to and profile?
I think it changes all the time, and that's not like a hedging answer. I mean, if you go back, I remember, is Bruce Upton still here?
He's been on a call for like 4 hours.
Anyway, I love Bruce. Bruce was our old, remember when technology was fun, when like everyone was like rooting for the tech people instead of like wishing them ill?
It was like pre-2016.
Yeah, pre-2016, like there was this string. Forbes just we had everyone on the cover. It was just like a wish list of like unicorns, big CEOs, that sort of stuff. Yep. So we usually get these folks. I mean, it's very interesting. I mean, I think right now, personally, we've talked about him all day, but like, who would want to sit down with like Elon Musk right now? Also, I want to sit down with RFK Jr. and hear like the bear story firsthand.
I want to read that.
I want like a few Manhattans with him, and like I want to hear the bear story, like what happened.
I think if you reach out to his team, you might be able to make it happen.
You might get that. But it keeps on keeps on changing. We think, money is power, it's all converging, and this is like the whole world. This whole Trump world is like a lot of these folks had been in our orbit. Like we had an under 30 summit, and I was hanging out with Vivek Ramaswamy way before he was in politics, when he was only running 2 public companies. But like he was hanging out with us at like the Shuk in Jerusalem, like drinking. Like we have like relationships with these people, and they're all converging now. In politics, it's kind of crazy. Again, not saying that like we're buddies with them, but I'm saying we've had access when they were just pure business folks, and now it's interesting to see kind of where they're lining up and the risks they're taking and that sort of thing.
That's very interesting, and it sort of leads me to my next question, which is
Like, I'd met Trump way before he ran for president, when he was just like Trump. It was like a fun conversation because he's just in charge of his building, and it was like funny to see his office full of his own pictures. It was very weird. But I'm saying, like, we've always been we've always had this great relationship with business, and now as more people in business get into other powers, we want to leverage those relationships.
I have to say, also, the Forbes billionaires and Forbes 400 list is really interesting, because it means that the newsroom has these consistent touch points with the richest people in the country, no matter what, twice a year, basically. And I was very lucky to never work on it, which is a good thing at Forbes. But
Your reporting shows.
yeah, thanks. That's why I went into PR.
Yeah.
But if I remember correctly, Trump was one of the only people that ever really tried to get on the list. Most folks were really reticent or would kind of lowball their numbers, and Trump was always the opposite.
Trump was definitely of that camp, but there were definitely people. Some people are always fighting their way on. People were trying to fight their way off. People would try to say like, "Oh, I want to be higher than this person because he's a son of a bitch, and I want to like prove it to him." Other people are like, "Oh, I like round numbers, so instead of like, 6.7 billion, like how about an even 8, like kind of thing." So Trump was not the only one.
Okay.
I love when people would have their name on their company. It would be called like Bertoni Inc. And they'd be like, I don't want my name on the list because then people will think I'm rich. I'm like, your name is on like the side of every building. But those are billionaires for you. They try.
Yeah.
There's no building with my name on it. Don't worry.
So what I was going to ask is, there was a time when I think Forbes was very much associated with billionaires. It still is. And then I think it started to become a reflection of the tech world and really associated with up and coming, I think in a way that made sense, powerful people in that world. Daniel Ek, you profiled, et cetera. You're now branching out into, I think, other industries, other genres of business, like creators and musicians and that world as well, celebrity, et cetera. How do you see that evolving, that sort of industry focus evolving?
Well, we always covered like the 400 and billionaires, not because we are obsessed with rich people. It's important to show the country who the people are that have money, which means they have power and they have influence, and we need to shine a light on these people for good or ill. It also shows you what society holds value. It's like, okay, these people are earning huge fortunes for what they're doing, versus other people who are doing other things which might be very important for the world, but they're not getting paid like these folks. That's interesting. We always look at everything through a business lens. So if we do reporting on musicians or actors, or we have an incredible sports money program with all the owners, you can't even get an NFL team for less than $7 billion now. And these athletes, it's always from a financial. We can tell a story, but we're talking about their entrepreneurship or their power they're getting because they're getting $100 million from Nike to have their shoe. Or they're using or Kevin Durant, who's using his Silicon Valley ties to start doing, seed investing with his money. Now he might be, a billionaire in 10 years because he's actually an incredible seed investor because everyone in Silicon Valley wanted him at a cocktail party and he wanted to invest. It's like those sort of things. So while we do cover musicians and we do cover the, not core like stocks and bond business, everything is looked at through a money lens.
What's your favorite story that you've ever done?
My favorite story. I got to go to the Twinkie factory in Emporia, Kansas, and they make 1 million Twinkies a day. And by the way, Twinkies start out as like 2 barrels of clear liquid and they end up as Twinkies. I don't know how that happens, but that was my favorite tech. But I did a cover on Sean Parker from Facebook. Well, he was from Facebook then. And it was like my first cover story, which is a huge deal. But those relationships kind of like was like a nice daisy chain into other, for me, career-changing stories, all from like that one node. So that's like my favorite story. It was also crazy. I got to fly around in his private jet. Is when he introduced me to a small music company called Spotify, which might be, catch on. And I was lucky enough to go do a cover on Daniel Ek a month later before Spotify had even entered America. So that made me look smart. So that was good. But it's funny how like some stories or connections lead to other stories.
I thought you were going to say Stewie Lala.
Stewie Ra?
Stewie Ra. I'm sorry.
No, I still get death threats on that one. That gives me gray hair.
So we're not allowed to talk about that
We
one.
can talk about it at cocktails if you want.
Okay. Be sure to ask Stephen about Stewie Ra over cocktails. It's worth going into.
And ask JJ about when he reported on Yacht Week and had Forbes pay for it. That's a good one too.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I have to ask about ownership. You cannot answer, but do you have any sense of who the owners of Forbes are going to be in the next year or so?
I don't. No, I really don't. I mean, we almost had a sale last year. It's not a secret, and they've been, figuring out since. But I do know that hopefully whoever buys Forbes is gonna be a growth play. They're not like looking to, cut corners and like sell us off. Like hopefully they believe in the brand and they're going to invest, and we can build like a business that's bigger than the brand.
Yeah. You've been in Forbes 16 years. We mentioned that. I won't mention it again. But what do the next 16 years hold for Forbes in your view?
If I knew JJ, I'd be a billionaire.
Okay, but humor me if you don't mind.
I don't know there's so much stuff coming. Luckily, I happen to work for a company that we've been around for 100 years. I stand on the shoulders of generations of reporters where Forbes means something. It's like the brand still means something and it has an angle, like what a Forbes story or coverage is about. In these days of like shifting media, like it's rare and it's good to know that we have that asset. And we've always been tech first, tech advanced, and we're going to just roll with this coming wave that no one knows what's happening.
Ladies and
but
gentlemen.
Hopefully we still will require revenue and earnings in all of our stories. I know that.
That is something I always held near and dear to my heart in terms of the cost of doing a magazine story with Forbes. We need your numbers. Yeah. Okay. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause for Stephen Bertoni.
Thank you all.